It was 2 in the morning when Theo found her. She was standing in the middle of an intersection, barefoot in the snow, whispering to the sky as if it would whisper back. Her hospital bracelet hung loosely from her wrist and her lips were blue. He didn't ask questions, just gave her his coat and guided her to the curb like she was a ghost, pretending to be solid. She said her name was Elise, and that she had BPD, though she preferred calling it too much heart and not enough skin. She laughed as she said it, then cried as if it had hurt. Theo understood too well his own diagnosis. Chronic treatment-resistant depression had hollowed him out years ago. He hadn't felt joy in months, hadn't trusted himself with sharp objects in longer. But that night, watching Elise talk to the stars, something in him flickered like a dying match. They started seeing each other at the all-night cafe near Burnside Bridge. Elise would bring her sketchbook, Theo his notebook. She sketched in wild lines, women with flames for hair, hearts stitched with thread. He wrote poetry he never read aloud. She said words like soul without irony. He said nothing but listened, like he'd forgotten how. Elise moved in by January, not because they were in love, because she had nowhere else to go, and because he didn't say no. She sang when she cooked. She danced barefoot in the kitchen. She crashed hard. Some days she screamed at the mirror. Other days she clung to him like she was drowning. She said, "I'm sorry, I'm so much." He whispered, "Maybe that's what I need." Theo relapsed in February. He disappeared for a night. Elise found him at the train tracks, sitting on the edge with an old poem in his hand. It read, "I've survived every night I thought I wouldn't, but I'm tired of trying to prove it." She sat beside him, her hands trembling. "I know what it's like to think your absence would be kinder than your presence," she said. "But you're wrong." They cried together, not because it solved anything, but because it reminded them they could still feel. In March, they started therapy together, two damaged people trying to stitch something warm from broken cloth. They didn't promise forever. They promised mornings. And sometimes that was enough. Elise still hears voices, sometimes hers, sometimes not. Theo still wakes up feeling like gravity is a lie, but there's coffee every morning, shared playlists, long silences that don't need filling. One night, during a blackout, they lit candles around the apartment. She drew constellations on his arms with pen. He kissed her shoulder and whispered, "You burn bright, and I've stopped being afraid of fire." She smiled. "Then let's keep each other warm." And they did, not perfectly, but truthfully, and in the quiet between storms. That was everything.
Setting, Minneapolis, March 2012. The room was small, with walls the color of a faded bruise and one window that never opened, all the way Claire called it. The blue room, not for its color, but for the way it felt, quiet, heavy, and always a little too cold. It was her third psychiatric hold in 15 months. She had stopped counting. She met Jonah during group therapy on a Wednesday. He was wiry, restless, eyes darting like he was trying to outrun a thought. "Schizophrenia," he said flatly, like it was a scar. He'd grown used to showing Claire had been diagnosed with severe anxiety and anorexia nervosa. They were opposites. He was chaos in motion. She was control in stillness. But something clicked. They started exchanging notes during art therapy. Hers were precise, tiny handwriting and neat margins. His were sketches, sprawling, wild lines that bled off the page. One day he drew her a girl made of glass, standing inside a house full of hammers. She kept it under her pillow. When Claire stopped eating again, Jonah noticed. He stole an apple from the nurse's station and left it on her bed with a note. "If you disappear, I disappear too." It was the first time she'd cried in weeks. On the outside, the world didn't understand them. Claire's mother called Jonah unstable. Jonah's father called Claire fragile. But in the blue room, they saw each other clearly. They spoke in half sentences and shared silences that felt like touch. He told her the voices weren't always cruel, just loud. She told him the hunger wasn't about weight, but about control, about disappearing slowly enough to still be noticed. By the time spring thawed the edges of Minneapolis, they were discharged within 2 days of each other. They made a plan every Sunday, 4 p.m., same bench by the Mississippi, no questions asked, just show up. The first Sunday, Claire was there. Jonah wasn't. The second he came, soaked from the rain, holding a small canvas in both hands. It was a painting of the blue room. The walls were now golden, and the window was wide open. They sat in silence. He gave her the painting. She gave him a granola bar and whispered, "You saved me when you said you needed me. I didn't know I mattered. Until then." They weren't cured, they weren't healed, but they were present together. Years later, they would repaint her apartment walls the same golden color from the painting. And when the noise in Jonah's head got too loud or Claire started skipping meals again, they'd sit together, backs against the wall, hands clasped like anchors. Because in the right kind of love, even broken things can build a home.
The first time Nora saw Eli, he was asleep on a bench beneath a willow tree in Forsyth Park, a sketchbook balanced on his chest, and a bandage on his wrist that hadn't been changed in days. She noticed the sketch before the scar, a charcoal portrait of a woman holding a cracked hourglass, sand slipping through the wounds in her palms. Nora wasn't looking for anyone. She had returned to Savannah after a breakdown in New York, her bipolar II disorder having stolen months from her life. Her mother's old house had sat empty for years. So did Nora. She thought time alone would heal her. It didn't. Eli opened his eyes and said, "You look like someone who's been holding her breath for too long." She laughed, because it was true. They met again the next day, then every day after that. He brought his sketchbook, she brought silence. They filled each other's empty spaces slowly. Eli confessed that he had been diagnosed with dysthymia, a form of chronic depression that made everything feel like it was happening underwater. Nora understood. She had once written a poem comparing her highs to fire and her lows to sinking ships. Their connection was slow and real. She loved the way he sketched with his eyes closed. He loved the way she hummed old Motown songs without realizing. Together, they created a world where broken wasn't something to fix, it was something to share. But love is never enough to keep storms away. In May, Nora stopped taking her medication. The fire returned, her words sharp, and she didn't sleep. One night she accused Eli of loving her only when she was fragile. She disappeared for 4 days, leaving behind a house full of unfinished paintings and an empty bottle of wine. When she returned, Isla was waiting on the porch, soaked in rain and worry. She collapsed into his arms, sobbing, shaking. "I wanted to feel alive," she whispered. "You are," he said. "You're the loudest heartbeat I've ever heard." He helped her through the night, held her through the silence. She started her treatment again, not for him, but because she wanted to stay. By June, the house felt warmer. She painted again, calmer, steadier strokes. He sketched her laughter, her eyes when she read, her hands when they trembled. They still had bad days, but they faced them together. One evening, as the sun dipped below the moss-draped trees, Nora said, "I'm scared I'll fall apart again." Eli touched her face gently, "Then fall, I'll catch you every time." And for the first time in years, she believed someone would. They stayed through the noise, through the quiet, through the space between raindrops, where love doesn't need to be perfect to be real.